and Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
If you're a Liberty Flames fan, before you download the VTR in Sports app, although if you're listening live, you probably already have, and you know to say Alexa or say Google Home, open VTR in Sports so that when the NCAA tournament begins, playing games Tuesday and Wednesday, including North Carolina, more on that in a bit, and Thursday, the entire action itself, and Friday on your home. Before you do that, just take a moment if you're a Liberty fan and reflect back on how awesome this journey has been for Liberty. Now, full disclosure, I am not a graduate of Liberty University. They weren't anything close to what they are athletically when I was growing up in the area. So, and I'm from Lynchburg, but they weren't anything what they are right now. But just in this day and age, I know we say this a lot. And yes, I'll couch it once again by saying, look, I'm not Mr. Get off my lawn. These guys should not be paid. Look, there's enough money that's been made off of them. I blame the people in charge, not leaders, for not having the foresight to realize at some point players are going to get paid. And maybe, just maybe, they could have jumped ahead of it and been proactive. The NCAA has taken, Trey will appreciate this analogy, is he is an Eagles fan like I am. Sorry to you, TJ, who's producing today. But as somebody who's a fan of...
It's looking a little bit like those Dallas Cowboys is peaking in the 90s.
The Dallas Cowboys are kind of like the NCAA. The NCAA, in this case, in our analogy, they are like the Dallas Cowboys. And that being, they wait until the last possible second to solve the obvious problem that you knew was going to arise at some point. So the NCAA could have gotten their Howie Roseman on, just saying, and been proactive in everything. Roseman extends players as early as possible, so all of a sudden $25 million a year for Devontae Smith and $33 million a year for A.J. Brown looks like a bargain when Jamar Chase goes over the $40 million a year threshold, and you've been front and center and proactive in negotiating from positions of strength. They'll do it again next offseason. Jalen Carter will reset the defensive tackle and maybe the defensive line market, but he'll be ahead of the curve, whereas Dallas waits till like the last possible second for Micah Parsons. Where we get to this analogy, of course, and why we come back from our mini detour in the fast lane is that the NCAA hasn't done any favors to have structure and organization. So it's harder than ever to have the level of continuity. And it's more prevalent in men's basketball than women's basketball. And yes, it's awesome for Liberty to have the Flames represented with the Lady Flames and the men's basketball team. But we'll focus right now in the fast lane on what the men's basketball team has accomplished and why, even if you're not a fan of Liberty, if you're a Liberty fan, this is catnip. But if you're not a fan of Liberty, but you love kind of what college athletics used to stand for, and in some cases still can, this is where you don't roll your eyes at what Richie McKay said after winning the Conference USA Championship the other day about how special this is.
Praise God. It's really hard to win a championship, and all that you go through in the season-long journey is sometimes it's a bumpy road to better. And really proud of our group because they just responded on every occasion. I think as leaders, as men, we get two ways that we can choose when something adverse happens to us. You can either react or respond. And I love being around this group because they're constantly responding. And I just think having a chance to do life with them and watch them in their true identity is special.
Look, it is if you're a Liberty fan. Take this moment and appreciate it. And this is not to demean what Kerry Green and Asia Boone and Bella Smuda, sorry, thanks for the correction from Trey. Should have paid attention when I listened to the morning warm-up on Apple Podcasts earlier today as I was listening live in the drop-off line at school as always. But, it's not to diminish the women's game because there are transfers. Ironically, Virginia Tech, former Virginia Tech head coach Kenny Brooks and a chunk of his players and recruits are now going to play the Liberty Lady Flames in Lexington later this week. But men's basketball, it's even more prevalent. This is an era where at the top ends of the spectrum, 95% of recruiting starts with, what are we talking about financially? And then after that, it goes into what you can provide as a program. Now, I don't think it's just financial. Guys will take less money for what they deem to be a better situation a lot of the time. But it is a major player in this day and age. And so that's where Richie McKay, to different degrees, just generally speaking, but I think even more so in the culture of college basketball, said something that Liberty Flames fans, again, would be right to take into consideration and embrace what they just experienced and accomplished. Yes, you worry about Oregon last game. Thank you for putting it at 10 p.m. Eastern time on Friday night. At least it's Friday, not Thursday, so I can, not have to worry about sleep Saturday. But 10 p.m. Friday, that's going to turn into like 10:45 p.m., just so you know. People like Trey that are night owls, love it. People like me that love to go to bed early, can't stand it. But we will all be listening on the VTR and Sports app, so thank God for that. But what Liberty has accomplished, generally speaking, winning championships is not normal. Added to it this day and age of college basketball, it should make this even more special.
I just think we're naive to think like every year you're going to be an NCAA tournament team, especially as a mid-major. You guys have heard me say it's like threading the eye of a needle in the dark. Like, think about how perfect or near perfect you had to be just to get here. We had a decent net and a decent Ken Palm, and I didn't see our name as an at-large candidate on one of the bracketologist lists. So, and that's a 27 and 16 or 26 and 16. I'm not sure what we are. So I just think, again, I consider it a privilege, and it's a pursuit of ours, but certainly it doesn't define us.
Dude, it's really hard. It's so much harder than it ever used to be, because this is nothing normal that you get in this day and age right now. It's really a challenge to replicate what the Liberty Flames have done. And that's where you should be appreciative. And it's not to say that you can't look ahead to Oregon and, Oregon justifiably is 6.5 point favorite. Not that you can't kind of roll your eyes at the irony that once again, Liberty's season might end at the hands of Oregon. But here's the perspective that I have. And TJ, you are a former Liberty University student. So you provide the fans' perspective in a way that Virginia Tech product Trey Lyle can't, and Rhodes College and Memphis product myself can't provide. And that is what the fans are actually thinking. I know John Manson, a CFRed.com founder of 545 today, he'll have that as well. Mm-hmm. But if I'm a Liberty fan, I look at the culture of college athletics now and go, wow, this is really cool. And if Oregon, once again, is the nemesis to Liberty athletics ending their season, don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as, hey, it took something special to get there. And if you keep it competitive for a while and maybe pull off the upset, it's just gravy on the top or icing on the cake, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, fans, I know for a fact fans were just wanting to win the Conference USA as soon as possible. So to have that championship that fans can brag about now, new conference, no longer in the ASUN, you're in bigger competition, and now you get to face Oregon. And these two teams, I think, are evenly matched. I mean, Liberty and Oregon both scoring 70-plus points a game. So I think it's going to be exciting.
I think it'll be a good game, and we'll have a chance to delve deeper into that really just Wednesday in the fast lane, because we're jammed up. We've got Virginia Tech baseball tomorrow and March Madness itself. All the games on the VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports. Starting, well, I guess the playing games Tuesday and Wednesday, but Thursday. So we'll kind of get into it today. Much more in-depth Wednesday, including pro handicapper Paul Stone. And throughout the entire week, the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle. So, and Ty Tracy. So I don't even know which days, every day, of course, but what days they'll even more get into this. But from a Liberty fan's perspective, it is so different to look at it right now. First of all, just the landscape of college athletics. But then there's the other angle to this if you're a Liberty Flames fan and you're a Liberty Flames supporter. And that's this. Colin Porter mentioned it. What it means to win the Conference USA Championship with this group of players. And this is another reason, if you're a Flames fan, why you should sit there and go, wow. Because you're not going to get this often. And Richie McKay and Liberty are more careful in vetting the type of players that they bring around. But it does come at a cost. Maybe the upside of what you can do in the tournament, you have a game or two, you're less likely to win. Maybe you can. I don't think they're getting past the Sweet 16 because they would play Duke in basically Duke's second home of Newark, New Jersey. But they would be... Trey doesn't know that joke, by the way, if you may see him in the background. Trey's giving me the squint eye look about saying Duke's second home of Newark, New Jersey. First of all, when Duke has made the national championship and won it, they go from Newark to win the national championship. The other joke about that being that there's so many Duke alums that from the north that they are all at home in Newark. And Duke got a gift among the gifts of the selection committee, more on this momentarily, in the Fast Five at 5-ish, is St. John's probably should have been the number 2 seed in the East. And it would have been a real fun atmosphere because it's not far from St. John's, but they get shipped out west. So Duke gets the easier draw, both competitive wise and not having to worry about a real true neutral site environment of half St. John's, half Duke fans, which would have been awesome. But hey, welcome to the theme of the day, the NCAA selection committee dropping the ball on certain things.
But it's worth it if we get an Arkansas St. John's second round matchup. I just want to point out, like, it's worth it.
It was.
It's 100% worth it. Also, I needed, as someone who wanted St. John's in their Final Four, but thinks I'm taking Florida and Duke over the field. Spoiler alert for later in the week in the morning warm up. I'm upset that St. John's is in the same region as Florida.
So, hey, I am as well. I really wish St. John's was in it as Duke because I think the games, not that St. John's will get by either Florida or Duke, but it's more, I think create the best atmospheres you possibly can. And in the men's selection committee, there are a lot of eyebrow-raising things that happen to pop up. But back to the point at hand with the Liberty Flames. Take a listen to what Colin Porter had to say about what this championship means given the context.
Just going in with someone who I can now consider my brother it's amazing. That's what Liberty's about. It's the relationships that you're going to build and the environment. You got Convo, like we were going to Convo together, campus community now every Wednesday night. Like it's the things like that that really matter the most. And then this is just a cherry on top. I mean, it's awesome to, we come to Liberty to play basketball, and that's like what we really dreamed of, as kids, is making the March Madness. And as freshmen, we had a shot at it, and it was a great game, but it went Kennesaw's way. And this year, just being able to capitalize on the opportunity at hand, it was really special.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, you capitalize on the opportunity at hand, but you hear something like that from Colin Porter, and then you hear what Caden Matheny had to say in addition to that, about what this win means for him and doing it with this particular group. And I mean, look, I get it. When it comes to athletes in this day and age, there is a level of eye rolling, even with, we'll call them semi-pro athletes, college athletes, as you might call them. But, there's a level of eye roll of media training and understanding how to say things that they kind of mean, but don't totally mean. I have no doubt that Caden Matheny means what he said when it means a lot to win it with this particular group, and in particular, his friend Colin Porter.
Yeah, I don't think it's truly hit me yet what just happened. Hopefully it will tomorrow when the name's announced. But yeah, it's been a dream of mine growing up, obviously, but I never really expected to be able to do it with the type of guys that I'm around. And that's what makes it more special, especially Colin Porter. I mean, that's my dog. That's my day one. He's gonna be a friend of mine for life, and to be able to just go through these past 2 seasons. He's a special person. I know like a lot of people doubt us with our height, but now we just won the conference tournament. So,
and yes, the height is an issue. It will be an issue against Oregon, and it is going to be something that, pun intended here, limits the ceiling when it comes to the Liberty Flames' long-term outlook. But what you look at from this team right now and what the Flames have put together is the ability to have those two, Porter and Matheny, kind of be the vetting pieces for Liberty. And Porter is a phenomenal shooter. He had a great tournament as well, especially on the defensive end. Matheny deserved to be player of the tournament. With the amount of threes he made, particularly in that semifinal game against Kennesaw, helping Liberty dig out of the hole, and even, helping pull away from Jacksonville State. But it's the ability for Liberty to lead. And in this day and age, I know, again, get off my long guy coming out for a second. But in this day and age, how often is it? I don't think this is the case with every team in college basketball or college football for that matter. I don't. I think some teams have the right blend of players that get along, and yes, they're paid, and yes, they're compensated, but it's about more than that. And it happens in the professional ranks. But when money enters the equation and people don't have the right guiding forces, those lines do become blurred, which is why it's not impossible that you'll ever hear this out of a Liberty athlete, certainly at one of the major sports like football and men's basketball where money is a bigger factor than ever. But Caden Matheny elaborating on this, and then Richie McKay interjecting at the end, it's a longer bite that we'll play, but it's about the life-changing nature of attending Liberty University. And again, this is coming from somebody who did not go to Liberty University. I did not. Who's not going to consider myself to be a fan, although yes, when they do well, it makes our jobs easier here in the fast lane. But if you're a Flames fan, or even somebody just with some outside rooting interest in what's going on, that just likes, to hear people that genuinely seem like they get along in an era of college sports where it's not totally lost. I'm not, down in the dumps. Let's just go find the nearest bridge, with all due respect to people who might be thinking about that. If you are, please consult a mental health coach who can guide you through that. But we're using it proverbially speaking in the sports analogy. When it comes to Liberty this year, there's a refreshing nature to what they've said, including this from Caden Matheny about how life-changing it was for him and what it meant for him to come to Liberty University to make him a better person, when I think some athletes still believe that, but there are also plenty more who don't.
It was a life-changing decision to come to Liberty. Just truly blessed that they trusted me in coming into this program. Once I came to this program, I never just took their decision to bring me in lightly, because I know that this university and this program it's one of the best in the country, and it's the most well-connected program in the country. This program, these coaches, my teammates it truly changed my life. I was in a tough place coming from Bowling Green. Didn't know if I wanted to continue playing basketball. I'm sure Coach McKay remembers those conversations in his office.
Thank the Lord.
But yeah, they brought me out of it and shed a new light into my life. So it's a decision that I'll forever be grateful for.
We will forever be grateful for it.
A lot of fans are for Liberty, because that's the type of thing that makes this place special if you're a Liberty Flames fan relative to the rest of college athletics. Don't get it twisted here. It doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden beat Duke in the Sweet 16 and go on to win the NCAA tournament. That's not happening here.
I mean, could they beat Arizona if let's say they survive Oregon? You think they can match up with Caleb? Caleb Love is on and off, so I think there's a good chance against Arizona.
Ding.
Yeah.
At Duke, they just got too many weapons. But if you get back Caleb Love, you may not even have to face Arizona. Legitimately, that's a possibility. I see a path for Liberty to make it to the Sweet 16. Now, do I think they're going to get there? Find out Wednesday when I reveal my brackets in the fast lane. But we will get to that later. And Paul Stone, Pro Handicapper, will give us some real advice.
If you think you can do better than Ed, you won't do better than me. At Trailal VT, I have linked a bracket group for fun, of course, because you need to go to Insane Radio Deals and buy more stuff in order for us to have prizes around here.
We might kick some stuff over from that site, by the way.
Okay, well, that's Ed's decision, not mine. I just came up with the bracket group.
Hey, that's why I said Mike, because I just thought about it.
At Trailal VT, I already shared a link, and there is some trash talk going on between Bryson Gordon, Ty, and myself.
Yes, there is, and I get drug into this, of course, catching strays.
And Brian Nolan.
Of course. I mean, you can't get away from that. In the meantime, so here's the deal. In the meantime, we will get back to the Liberty Flames with John Manson from HisToryOfRed.com. But there are other topics to address, including a local star who's found a new home with...
The standard is the standard.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
We need to get some kind of camera work going on in the Hill City to find out when Mike Tomlin comes down here, because he has gotten a lot of former Virginia Tech, William and Mary, of course, he went there, players connected to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The latest is today, as the Pittsburgh Steelers are signing former Browns safety and 3-time football, 2-time basketball champion, other way around, 3-time basketball, 2-time football champion at Altus, or whatever, 5-time champion among football and basketball, Juan Thornhill. Singularly by one of the 10 best high school football players that I've seen play in my time. The Evans brothers fit that category. Gideon Davidson from LCA, who's going to Clemson, are all in that particular camp. But Juan Thornhill, it's amazing, because as great as he was at Alta Vista, state champion in multiple sports, freakish athlete, he was really good at Virginia as well. He's just a guy in the NFL. He signs a week into the NFL free agency, which means he's not a highly sought-after guy. Part of that's the safety position. Those guys are much more interchangeable than in a lot of spots, but the Steelers value intelligence and toughness, and Thornhill has certainly brought that and seems to fit the culture of a man who believes
The standard is the standard.
Meanwhile,
Number 4.
speaking of the standard is going to have to be raised. In places like Virginia Tech women's basketball, they were on the bubble, and David Cunningham of TechSideline.com last week mentioned it was more likely than not that the Lady Hokies did not make the tournament because of the quick exit in the ACC tournament to Georgia Tech. And there were some people thinking it could get closer once the Ivy League got multiple bids in to the NCAA women's basketball tournament. It spelled gloom and doom for the Virginia Tech Lady Hokies' chances. Now, Trey Lyle is a bit upset about that. He'll weigh in tomorrow in the morning warm-up from 7 to 8 a.m., so keep it locked to hear his thoughts on that. But, I get it. I have no issue because at the end of the year, take care of business when you need to. And when you give up basically a 17-0 run to Georgia Tech in a must-win game in the ACC tournament, that was what Virginia Tech needed. They didn't do it. They didn't come close. Yes, you put yourself in that spot and things don't go well, it becomes a real issue. Meanwhile, another idea is
Number 3.
the JMU Lady Dukes and the men's basketball teams both missed the NCAA tournament. The JMU men was not a surprise. They did not make the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, and you kind of knew when you heard them lose last Sunday on the VTR and Sports app that it was unlikely that JMU would make it to the big dance for men's basketball because you're not getting multiple bids out of that conference. And if you're going to go, you need to at least make the conference championship game unless you had a dominant regular season. JMU men really good in Sun Belt play, the four-way tie for first. But they were not great going into that, so it's not a real surprise that the JMU men's basketball team did not make it. Meanwhile,
Number 2.
the JMU Lady Dukes, a lot of disappointment, but Shane Metlin, who's going to join us to kick off covering the Commonwealth in about 5 minutes, brought this point up. And the one that was the most intriguing is this. The one that jumped out when it comes to Shane Metlin's point, which is the hard thing for JMU is not getting a team like Texas, which is a top 10 team in women's basketball, to come play JMU. By the way, wouldn't be shocked in the next couple of years when Kenny Brooks gets things going at Kentucky, even more than they already have, that he would be welcoming of going back to his alma mater in JMU and doing a solid for JMU. It's the teams that are below that, your fringe top 25 teams where JMU has a chance to get a good quality win at home or on the road. It's the same problem that they're experiencing in women's basketball as the men's basketball programs like Liberty and others experience. It's getting those big opportunities to get the big victories. You don't get a lot of them, so it crimps your style and your opportunity to go even further. Speaking of Liberty, by the way,
Number 1.
the Liberty Lady Flames, congratulations to them on winning the Conference USA Women's Basketball Tournament. What a cool story, and we'll get to this more Wednesday in the Fast Lane, but the resiliency, and again, in an era where, and I think this is more prevalent in the money-making sports, football and men's basketball, but women's basketball has some of that. In that era, it's very rare you get players like Bella Smuda or Asia Boone who come back after a disappointing run, and instead of cowering and leaving, they come back because they want to perform well. And that's a real cool thing. They are underdogs, and they deserve to be to Kenny Brooks, Kenny Brooks, Kentucky Lady Wildcats. Sorry to open up cold sores and bad wounds for the Virginia Tech fans. But, for Liberty to get to this point, it's a nice end to their season, and it's a cool matchup because you'll get an idea of what Kenny Brooks is building at Kentucky with the former Virginia Tech players. But again, for Liberty women, similar to the men, great story, great season, but the real reward was what they just accomplished. Meanwhile, what we will accomplish when we return is looking at your teams and topics in greater depth with the experts you know and trust. That being covering the Commonwealth. Next, this is the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app and 93.3 FM.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Subaru. Love to drive? Then you'll love the all-new 2025 Subaru Wilderness family. These cars are built for adventure with symmetrical all-wheel drive, rugged capability, and legendary Subaru reliability. These stylish vehicles are ready for anything. Plus, every new Subaru we sell comes with an exclusive Terry Promise, a lifetime powertrain warranty. Visit us on Forest Road in Lynchburg or browse our inventory online 24/7 at terrysubaru.com. Terry Subaru. You'll love our cars.
When the thrill of playing ball turns into the agony of a broken windshield or car window, contact Apple Auto Glass. Your local auto glass repair shop on Allegheny Avenue in Lynchburg. Apple Auto Glass provide a professional assessment with the honesty from your neighbors, so you can get back to sharing the great moments this season.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood, offered by Oakwood Villas Retirement Homes LLC, the best kept secret in Bedford. Our stunning community offers spacious, one-level modern villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy a walk through our landscape community, connect with neighbors in our clubhouse, and take in the views of the peaks. Visit the villas at oakwood.com or contact Robin Lee Sage at 434-238-4477, brokered by Legacy Realty and Development.
The Black Rose, Mount Joy, Government Mule, JJ Gray and Mofro. Need us to continue? Paul Coffin, the California Honey Drop, Larkin Poe. And that's just a handful of acts performing at Floyd Fest 25 Aurora, July 23rd through 27th at Festival Park in Floyd. Ticket prices increase April 1st. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com. Winner of the Best Music Festival, even more acts to be announced soon for Floyd Fest 25 Aurora. So get your tickets now at floydfest.com before prices increase April 1st. We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
Hey gang, this is Bud Foster, former defensive coordinator for the Virginia Tech Hokies. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle BT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, he warned you, and now, unfortunately, it has come to fruition as we start covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
With Shane Metlin of the Harrisonburg Daily News Record, DNRonline.com, and at Shane_DNR Sports. Shane, great to be speaking with you. You warned us last week after they lost in overtime, as heartbreaking as it was for the JMU Lady Dukes, that ultimately that could be what cost them a chance to go to the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Did you get a more sinking feeling when you saw the selection committee put multiple Ivy League teams in the big dance?
Yeah, watching it as they revealed the bracket, you knew obviously for JMU, if they were getting in, they were going to be one of those 11 seeds that was in a play-in game. Like they would have been one of the last 4 teams in. As it turned out, they were one of the first 2 out. And yeah, once you saw Columbia in one of the first playing games they announced, then you knew there was only one more spot really for JMU, and it looked like Princeton wound up getting that one. So 3 Ivy League teams get in. Not that there's anything wrong with those teams, but you did kind of feel like JMU maybe had a fairly decent claim over a team like Princeton, but it was really, really close as to which resume was better.
Yeah, I mean, there were close calls all along the way. The point you also brought up on the Purple and Bold podcast with Katie Harper, Shane, earlier today for the JMU Lady Dukes, and that is rectifying a situation like this. Is there anything they can do outside of winning the pressurized must-win Sun Belt Conference tournament, given that, like you said, they could schedule teams like a Texas or maybe even a South Carolina or a UConn that are probably going to just beat them handily, but it's getting that next tier of teams where you actually have a chance to win to be willing to schedule the Lady Dukes.
Yeah, it's tough. And, they did convince, I think, Sean O'Regan has a pretty good relationship with the NC State program. They convinced them, not knowing that was going to be a top 10 team, thinking it was more like around the top 25 type of team and the game that they really wanted to play. And, they got that, but those games are really hard. They had Wake Forest, who, isn't great, but, that's an ACC game that they, owed a return game to, and they turned them down. They said, no, thanks. Don't come down here. We're going to find somebody else to play. So it is very difficult with the scheduling. And, I'm diving into that right now, kind of, who they talked to, who they didn't, trying to get some games. And I think that'll end up being pretty interesting to see, like, just how tough the scheduling is.
Shane_DNR Sports with us here in the Fast Lane. Shane, good to be speaking with you. We'll shift over to the men, who most people expected they would not make the NCAA men's basketball tournament. They did not, but at least it's better than what happened with the NIT offering and then rescinding an offer with only a written statement to South Alabama. Have you ever seen anything as much of a debacle as that?
Not really. I mean, probably the closest thing, and this is not hurting anybody's feelings as much, but last year with the WBIT, which is basically the women's version of the NIT, now run by the NCAA, they announced that Miami was in, and they'd actually turned down. So the JMU got their spot last year. So, they weren't feeling as bad because it went their way, but similar situation where they, before they started making announcements, didn't really know who was in the field. And that's they got to do better with that. That's, people's careers are ending based on whether or not they get to that tournament. And that's really messing with some people's emotions.
Oh my goodness. It's not just that, it's a total lack of class and professionalism. But in this day and age, a lot of that sadly seems to have gone out the window. The insight is not out the window. It's in the palm of your hand. It's Shane_DNR Sports on Twitter and DNRonline.com. Shane, good to be chatting with you in the Fast Lane. Thank you for your time as always, and we look forward to speaking soon.
All right, thanks.
Shane Metlin with us here in the Fast Lane.
Now to UVA.
With JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. Jerry, good to be speaking with you as we welcome you back in. You've been all over this at JerryRatcliffe.com. Ryan Odom, the top candidate that you reported with us last week in the Fast Lane, does he still remain the top candidate, at least amongst the desired positions from the Virginia Cavaliers?
I couldn't hear you real well there, Ed, but I think you're asking about, is Odom still at the top of the list?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're still hearing. I think apparently, according to my sources down in Raleigh, he's no longer in this picture at NC State, and a lot of people thought that the Wolfpack would go after him pretty hard. But now apparently his name has popped up on the list at Villanova. They fired their coach over the weekend. And, Iowa, I think, fired McCaffrey. So his name has been mentioned out there, and Lord knows where else. But he still appears to be at the top of Virginia's list. We keep hearing all kinds of rumors that a deal is done or agreed to, but there's no official word from that from anyone who matters. It's just a bunch of rumors and message board crap. So apparently, he's the leading candidate, and we probably won't hear anything until he or some of these other candidates lose out in the NCAA tournament this week.
Hootie, the natural follow-up question would be, how big of a threat are the Villanova Wildcats to the Virginia Cavaliers if Ryan Odom is the person number one atop the Virginia list?
Well, who knows? There's all sorts of factors that go into these sort of things. And a lot of coaches I've talked to say that before they'll jump to another job, they have to be personally confident in their own minds that the school president and the AD can be trusted and that has their back. And so that's always a factor. Sometimes money's a factor. Sometimes NIL is a factor. There's all sorts of things that may play into a coach's decision. We remember Anthony Poindexter a few years ago, and everybody thought that he was going to be the guy, and then all of a sudden he meets with the AD and things fall apart. So who knows? We've seen that happen several times over the last 20, 30 years where coaches appear to be headed somewhere and then things blow up. But, Villanova has lots of NIL money, not to say that Virginia doesn't. But who knows? Who knows what Ryan Odom is looking for?
Yeah, that's the big question mark in terms of the Ryan Odom side of things for the Virginia Cavaliers. Other candidates in the list, TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State is a name you've brought up. Ben McCollum over at Drake, the coach at Furman as well, whose name escapes me, but he's 41 years old. Out of that bunch, are all three still on the radar at Virginia, or is it Ryan Odom and then a gap back to everybody else?
I think there's a gap, but I think there's been a lot of noise about McCollum lately, but quite frankly, I don't understand that. I mean, the guys winning at Drake, that's a big jump from Drake to the ACC, where everybody is apparently going to be investing more money in basketball after the ACC commissioner said this past week that he felt like that's where the ACC ADs should be focusing, putting their money on in the immediate future is basketball and not football, which is kind of a reversal of what it has been. But I don't know, do you want to take a risk on a guy who is in his first year in Division I after winning, dominating Division II? But I don't know. If you're an AD whose job is on the line, make it that you've got to get it right this time, are you willing to take that kind of a risk? I don't know. I don't know that I would be.
Yeah, it would be a big one. There's no doubt about that. And we'll see where the directions go for the Virginia Cavaliers. Our direction is to jerryratcliffe.com. Hootie, great to be chatting with you today in the Fast Lane. We appreciate your time as always.
Great to talk to you, Ed. See you next week.
And last but not least, or maybe least,
For part one of Covering the Commonwealth, that is,
the Virginia Tech Hokies.
with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, who's hanging out with us right now here in the Fast Lane. David, great to be speaking with you. Virginia Tech women's basketball is he not with us? All right. Well, here's what we'll do. I'm going to throw another curveball then. We're going to go to a break. Then we'll come back and get David Cunningham because we will not be stalling forever. David Cunningham with us next here in the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app at 93.3 FM.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years with the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one-stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER-1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
The weather is heating up, which means that baseball season is as well. Join the Lynchburg Hillcats on Tuesday, April 8th for our opening day extravaganza as the team kicks off the 2025 campaign against the visiting Kannapolis Cannonballers. Gates will open an hour before first pitch, and the fun will continue all night long. Tickets are on sale now, so get yours today at lynchburg-hillcats.com.
Hi, I'm Chuck from Aquatrack Adventures in Salem. The Virginia Talk Radio Network and InsaneRadioDeals.com have helped our company grow by sharing our company's message throughout Central and Southside Virginia. The gift cards and experiences sold on InsaneRadioDeals.com have brought us many new customers. If you're a business that wants to grow with a message that resonates and gets results, I highly recommend InsaneRadioDeals.com and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Simply put, it works.
When you're voted one of the best plumbers according to Lynchburg Living magazine, you want to hire the best. Sullivan Plumbing wants the best plumbers to join our award-winning team. Do you have a clean driving record? Do you have at least 4 years plumbing experience? Then you're a 5-star recruit, and Sullivan Plumbing would love to meet with you. Take the first step. Call Sullivan Plumbing in downtown Lynchburg or email sullivanplumbing@gmail.com.
Guests are great, except unwanted guests. At Specialty Exterminating, we know the difference. Hi, I'm Sabrina Kennan with Specialty Exterminating. We help you keep unwanted pests out of your home. Now we can keep those reptiles away. Our new reptile repellent is the perfect add-on for your pest prevention service. It's pet and people safe, so it's perfect for any homeowner, especially pool owners and homes in wooded and rural areas. Call us so we can repel the reptiles. Specialty Exterminating, your pest prevention partner since 1979.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Oh, we'll get to that in a moment. Paparazzi, of course. But we start off part 2 of covering the Commonwealth with
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth. A look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. David, departures. There are now 3 of them from the Virginia Tech men's basketball program after announcing today, the third being Patrick Wessler within the last hour, joining guards Jaden Young and Rodney Brown, who entered the transfer portal. Are these alarm-raising, or is this part of a bigger picture roster overhaul from Mike Young that people will need to see how it shapes out before making definitive conclusions?
Yeah, it's the latter, Ed. Mike Young last week in Charlotte, he told me, and then he said it again after the game. He talked about this roster needs to be more talented, that he wasn't going to go through what he went through last year again, that he needed to fix a lot of different areas. They need to be better in the front court and the back court. And this is the week, after the Hokie season ended last week. I'm sure the players got to go home, for spring break and at least the end of the week and spend some time with their families and then come back. And it's the start of some tough conversations. But the bottom line is Virginia Tech finished 13-19 overall this year. That's not good enough in Blacksburg. Whit Babcock knows that. Mike Young knows that. And this is the start of conversations and then the start of attrition. And for guys to come in, well, first, guys on the current team have to leave to free up roster spots. And you're seeing some of that. And none of those really jumped out to me. I think the one that maybe is a little bit more surprising than others is Jaden Young. He's a guy who started some games this year, multiple, and came on at times during the year, especially late. He and Patrick Wessler both, I thought, were pretty good down the stretch for Virginia Tech. But again, bottom line is, more resources allocated for Mike Young this year, this offseason. You got to, the portal doesn't officially open for another week, but hey, it's time to go out and replenish your roster and bring in better talent. And to do that, you have to have guys leave first. So that's kind of what you're seeing right now. Nothing that's happened today. And even there's one announcement that I've heard is coming that hasn't happened yet. Even that one, none of those really jump off the page in any manner. Those are kind of expected. It seems like Mike Young will be able to retain at least most of the core he has right now. So that's a good sign, and we'll see where they go from here.
When you're in the ACC, unless you're at Duke or maybe Louisville or Carolina, the old phrase, you can't pay everybody, probably needs to be invoked by a lot of fans, a la NFL salary caps. Meanwhile, the Virginia Tech Lady Hokies. Was there more optimism once you saw brackets after that loss to Georgia Tech in the first round of the ACC, or in their first game, rather, of the ACC women's basketball tournament? Or did you always anticipate that ultimately what transpired, the Lady Hokies just barely missing out on the NCAAs, was going to be the outcome?
And I think the last straw for Virginia Tech was Richmond losing in the A-10 semifinals. Richmond got in as an at-large team, as it should have. However, the Spiders losing to St. Joe's in that semifinal of that tournament which was a couple days after the Hokies were bounced in the ACC tournament. So after Virginia Tech had its last chance to kind of prove to the committee and have the ball in its court, well, Richmond, a team that was an at-large shoe-in, lost, meaning that there was one more bid stealer, and that happened to be George Mason. And as a result, the Hokies were the last team out, the first team out of the tournament. They just missed being the last team in. I'm not really surprised. Obviously a bummer for all involved, but the bottom line is that Virginia Tech lost 5 of its last 8 games to end the regular season. Or I guess not even to end the regular season, just period. 5 of the last 8, 6 of the last 10. You can't end the season on a note like that. And 3 of those losses were to non-NCAA tournament teams, 2 of which came in overtime. It wasn't like the Hokies were getting blown out of the water by some of these teams, but they were leading late against a couple teams like Stanford and Boston College and lost. And I know there were other things that transpired in some of those games, but the bottom line is you have to be better than that if you want to prove you're in the NCAA tournament. I do think the Ivy League conversation is interesting. A 3-bid conference this year for the Ivy, that is a whole different conversation. But I'm not really surprised. It's funny. Once North Carolina got in on the men's side, I sat there and said, maybe Virginia Tech will get in on the women's side. But alas, different committees, different members, of course, and Hokies are the first team out. And, unfortunately, this snaps a little bit of a streak they had of making consecutive NCAA tournaments.
It does, and now it's back to the starting board, at least for Megan Duffy, although they are in the WBIT, which is the women's version of the NIT. David Cunningham, The Real D, kind of Twitter, Instagram, TechSideline.com, where you can keep updated with all the insight. David, great to chat. Thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane.
Sounds good, Ed. Talk to you soon.
Now to the Liberty Flames.
John Manson from ASeaofRed.com stopping by with us here in the Fast Lane. John, what a weekend it was for the Liberty basketball program, particularly on Saturday. The men and the women, Conference USA champions. Has it sunk in yet as a Liberty alum and somebody who writes and contributes to ASeaofRed.com, just what a weekend this was for Liberty basketball on both fronts?
Yeah, it really was a weekend, for the record books. First time since 2004, so over 2 decades ago that both the men and the women won the conference tournament. And, of course, that was back in the Big South 2 conferences ago. And both programs have had a lot of success in their own rights. It's just they kind of didn't match up correctly. The women dominated the Big South in the late 90s up until they left the conference in 2018 and switched over to the ASUN like the men. And that's when the men and Coach McKay kind of got things rolling in the ASUN with 3 straight conference championships. And then, just missing out a couple of times on last second shots in conference finals, and then getting back to the big dance this weekend in Huntsville. So definitely a great weekend for Liberty basketball, Liberty sports, Liberty athletics, and those teams and those coaches represented the university and on a great scale and great level. And I think they'll also do the same thing for Conference USA. The men obviously getting a 12 seed and the women a 13 seed taking on Kentucky. So I think they'll both have a good showings in the big dance this coming weekend.
How congruent are these journeys where both of them featured teams that ended the year in 2023-2024 last season disappointingly, not winning the Conference USA men's or women's basketball tournaments, but having a core group of players? For Liberty, it's Zach Cleveland, Colin Porter, and Kata Matheny. For the Lady Flames, it's Bella Smuda, it's Asia Boone, who came back despite having a chance to bail. Both the men's and the women's programs got over the top in part because of their resiliency.
Yeah, they're both similar yet different paths. The women, and Coach Green talked about this in Huntsville after he won the championship and cut down the nets on Saturday night. Talked about how, they haven't won it in 6 years, going back to 2018, but they've been there. They've finished as a runner-up on a number of occasions, and just so happened to be in the ASUN, where Florida Gulf Coast is a dominant mid-major program, and Middle Tennessee had a very impressive team last year, winning a first-round game. And again this year, they tied the Flames for the regular season title, and then made it to the championship game, a rematch from last year's title. Whereas the men, it was a little bit of a struggle. First year in Conference USA last year, finishing in a tie for fourth place in the regular season before bowing out in the quarterfinal round. So, Coach McKay, went back to the drawing board in the summer. And yeah, you mentioned, three key contributors that came back, and Colin Porter, Katie Matheny, and Zach Cleveland. Those certainly are, probably the three most valuable players to the team. But he also went to the transfer portal, went to the JUCO market, got in, four guys, if you include Isaiah Enan, who went down to injury back in, December, January at the turn of the calendar there, and was lost for the season. But also Owen Aquino from the JUCO ranks and two D2 guys in Taylon Peter and Javon Moffmer. And got more length, more size, more athleticism, and some depth and experience that certainly has paid dividends throughout the season and is a critical and really primary reason why the Flames were successful this season with not just the tournament title, but also the regular season title and, 28 wins and counting so far.
John Manson, JC Manson, Twitter, CFRed.com, hanging out with us today here in the Fast Lane. John, last one for you. The Liberty men, they get Oregon. The Liberty women, familiar to many of our audience, Kenny Brooks, not at Virginia Tech anymore. Georgia Amore, and Kentucky are the destination. Is this icing on the cake of what's been a great year where, the Flames are to an extent playing with house money in the men's and women's tournaments? If they can pull the upsets, it'd be awesome. But if not, they've still had great seasons.
Yeah, that's true. I think, for the men, they certainly expect to go out to Seattle and win a game or two and keep their season going. You heard Coach McKay and the players talked about that since, Saturday night when they won Conference USA tournament. And I think I think it opened at a 4.5 point line. I think it's moved up to 6.5 last I saw earlier today. So, you've seen a couple national guys pick them as the upset over the Ducks. So it's going to be a tough matchup, obviously. I mean, Oregon, Dana Altman, he's likely a Hall of Fame coach at some point in time. And he's been to the Final Four and had success spanning multiple decades and multiple programs. And so the Flames will have their work cut out for them, but I wouldn't put anything past this team, balanced offensive attack, kind of led by Matheny. I mean, obviously what he did this past week in Huntsville will go down in the record books for the Liberty Flames basketball program. And, for the women, I think a lot of it's similar to what you were saying about playing with house money. I mean, it was just trying to get over that hump of coming up second and being the runner up so many times over the past, 5 or 6 years. And they finally did so. We were able to cut down the net Saturday night. And now as they go to Lexington, playing as a road team, right? At Lexington, Kentucky, and the Wildcats, and Kenny Brooks, as you mentioned, who's, no stranger of Coach Kerry Green, the Lady Flames program. So it'll be a tough matchup. But again, Liberty's done it before. Katie Feenstra sitting over there on the sideline as an assistant coach, and she was on the team when they made it to the Sweet 16 back in 2005. So 20-year anniversary, I'm sure they would want nothing more than to have another magical run in them this weekend. And you never know, a player like Bella Smuda with her length and size, being able to clog up things in the paint on both ends of the floor, they could have some magic left in them. We'll just have to wait and see how things go. And both of those games are, Friday. The women play at noon and the men in the late window, 10 p.m.
John, by the way, I can't wait for that late game. Nothing says great quite like 10 p.m., which will be like 10:40 p.m. tip-off after all the delays leading into Liberty, Oregon. Last one for you. Thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane amidst your now famous family with your wife and both your daughters getting some screen time that was really cool to see in Huntsville on Saturday night.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. They had a lot of fun down there, and appreciate you and others that have sent over some screen grabs and things of them on the TV. And fortunately, they were cheering and applauding and not, sharing their thoughts on the officiating.
They gave all the only moments captured on camera were proud Papa moments. So you can rejoice in that, John. Thank you for your time in the Fast Lane. We will chat again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Ed.
Now to
Speaking of feel-good stories, Josh Berry, that was a legitimate win for him out at Las Vegas yesterday. The question, does Michael Massey remember that, or was he too punch drunk from having to keep Brian Nolan in check? We ask him that question now as he joins us here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGMA Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna Danville Southside, and the VTRN Sports app. Michael, were you able to actually take in the greatness of the last 25 laps where Josh Berry found his way to get a win and into victory lane?
Well, hey, Ed, thanks for having me on. Yes, I was able to take that in. Actually, it worked out perfectly because I was at the Care Center getting Ryan Blaney and Shane Van Gisbergen, who had just crashed out of the wreck. Got the interviews with them. I was thinking, man, it's getting really close to the end. That's when Noah Gragson had a flat tire. Caution came out. I got to get back up in the media center and, watch the race play out. And, man, what a drive by Josh Berry. Who would have thought just 5 weeks in, the Wood brothers signing him has already paid off.
It's amazing what he's done. How remarkable is this story that people thought Josh Berry would get his first victory on a short track, and while he wasn't the best car and they were not the best team, Hendrick looked like the best team at Las Vegas with the Liberty driver William Byron and Kyle Larson as threats. They were at least up there and clearly showing with Josh Berry that they've got the goods to maybe not win all these races, but not be embarrassed like they were in prior years.
Right, and I think the biggest thing is it wasn't a fluke because we've seen through the first couple weeks of the season, I think Circuit of the Americas is the only one excluded just because he's not really a great road course racer, but Berry's been fast every single week. And yes, Larson and Byron, I think, were faster. I'd say Joey Logano and Austin Cindric is pseudo Penske teammates because they have an alliance with Penske. I'd say they were better than Berry too. But all those guys gave it away. Berry was in the perfect position, capitalize. He was running around the top 10, top 5 all day long. So when others had problems, he was in position. He outdueled Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. And it was a heck of a race. And my hat's off to Berry and the Wood Brothers team.
Indeed. It's a real cool story to see what they did yesterday at Las Vegas. And the way they won was a very legitimate way, much like the insight from Michael Massey is legitimate at frontstretch.com and at M_Massey22. Michael, heading toward this weekend's race at Homestead, just initial thoughts. Is this back to being one of those setups where it may be Hendrick versus Gibbs like people expected yesterday to become, or are we seeing more, particularly out of other underdog drivers like Daniel Suarez and Ryan Preece, that we might get another surprise, if not winner, driver or two in the top 5?
Yeah, I say the parity is sparking up this year. Where we might have those other teams, those smaller teams that aren't, Gibbs and Hendrick and probably even Penske go up there and win. But at the same time, I think this is the week where Hendrick strikes back because Kyle Larson, William Byron, they've been known to get their wins early in the season, and they're both good at Homestead. So I think you'll see some underdogs, some of the other teams up there in the play for it. But I could see one of those guys getting the win, Byron or Larson.
Michael, thank you for joining us in the Fast Lane today. We appreciate it, and it warms our hearts to know that you survived Brian Nolan out in Las Vegas.
Barely. I mean, it was a rough experience. There were some times where it was a little flaky, but we're still here, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we all expected nonetheless.
And last but not least, or maybe least, just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
The Washington Commanders, they didn't quite make all the splashes people might have thought in free agency, but overall, through the first wave of free agency, they've got their answers. They got one at left tackle with Laramie Tunsil. They have one at defensive tackle with Javon Kinlaw replacing Jonathan Allen. And joining us now to discuss these moves and potentially more, Candy Waller with us in the Fast Lane. First of all, Seawall, we've had a chance now to hear from Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle, and left tackle Laramie Tunsil, among others. Are you more satisfied? Are you still in a wait-and-see mode? What are your initial observations on what those two in particular are bringing to this franchise?
I think overall it kind of is always a wait and see. But what I will say is they definitely show all of the energy and overall excitement you would want to see from a Washington Commander. When they're saying all the right things, they're acknowledging all the right things, they're being super transparent and honest about what they've been through, where they've come from, and what just the whole process has been, and just the overall growth and things that they've learned since they've been in the league. So I think it's all trending in the right direction. They're all saying the right things. And again, they're displaying what we've heard Adam Peters and Dan Quinn say that they want to see out of Washington Commander.
Is the most telling thing you've heard of either of these initial press conferences from defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw and left tackle Laramie Tunsil that Tunsil pretty emphatically didn't just take account for being the most penalized offensive tackle with the volume of snaps he had last year, but the fact that he remembered the volume of false starts and penalties that he committed to the point where it almost seems like that's a point of emphasis.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hey, yes, we know that he's excited and he displayed, can't wait to block for Jaden Daniels. But we also know in a couple of games last season for the Washington Commanders, false start penalties were an issue. They were a huge issue, especially in week 2 in the red zone. And we've seen some of those get committed, by Nick Allegretti, at times Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley. And so you don't want your, start left tackle when you're in the trenches there, when the game is on the line, getting a penalty. That's one of the things. And that's why I thought it was so interesting that they made the trade for Tunsil, because I guess he's just that extraordinary of a left tackle, because that is definitely something that Dan Quinn talked about that he didn't want to see, right? It's those pre-snap penalties that really hurt and really can, it's unnecessarily and negatively extend plays. So for him to openly acknowledge that without being prompted, so to speak, says a lot about his character, but it also says a lot about the fact that he already knows that he's got to correct that. That number's got to come down this season.
I am pretty sure that your brother in sports media with the Commanders, Lake Lewis, is going to hop on the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle tomorrow, I believe, to talk about this. But why not jump the ship on this, so to speak, and get your perspective on this? Does your alarm, you're big into use your clues, is your saying, Candy Waller, president of Bowie TV Sports. So we'll use our clues, not from the Washington Commanders, but all the money the Cincinnati Bengals are delegating first to Joe Burrow, then to T. Higgins, now to Jamar Chase. Does that boost the likelihood that Trey Hendrickson might be on his way out and that the defensive end might have a home in our nation's capital or just outside?
I mean, you would think that he would, anybody would want Trey Hendrickson. Like, let's just be for real. Like, that is, he is sought after. But you almost got to think they have to trade him now because they can't pay him. So something's got to give, and he's not. It would be shocking to me if someone didn't have to give up a first-round pick for him. So it will be interesting, very, very interesting to see how this plays out, because the Bengals are clearly all in on their offense. But now it really looks like they have to trade Trey Henderson because they just can't pay him. So we'll see if, maybe folks are just waiting it out to see if the Bengals come down on their asking price. But it is definitely more than likely that he will absolutely be traded now.
The odds are going up, and it may be to DC. We will find out. We know where the inside is. We don't have to dig far. It's Bowie TV Sports and their president, Madam President, Candy Waller, with us in the Fast Lane. Seawall, great to have you step into the Fast Lane. Thank you for your time today, and it's always good to chat.
Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.
Indeed we will. Candy Waller to wrap up the Fast Lane now on To Make It Rain with Adam Shine. And a reminder, VTR and Sports app, get it downloaded so you can listen to all of March Madness right here on your home for the entire big dance, VTR and Sports Lynchburg.
Tournament team. I also think, and I understand the optics, right? The Bubster, Bubba Cunningham, UNC athletic director, head of the tournament committee. It looks bad, which is why Gil answered all the questions from Reese Davis on ESPN last night, and he absolutely nailed it. 8-0 for North Carolina in Quad 2.